Right. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, August 29th meeting of the Reston Association Board of Directors. We have 6 directors with us today, and we do expect Director Farrell to be joining a little bit later this evening. President Jalal Mapar and Director Santa will not be joining us today. I'll keep opening comments very brief here. This is a note to my fellow directors. Executive session today provides us some unique challenges for staff, given that we don't have as many access or areas for them to reside. So we will start to talk through that when we get to executive session, but I just make a call for everyone that the topics today, we have an opportunity to make them as efficient as we possibly can. And I think everyone will benefit greatly from that. But and then the other thing I'll talk through is just in regards to the agenda, I'll look for benefits-based pyramid to be removed from today's agenda. And we can look to discuss that in new business where we can fit that back in. Outside of that, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion for the approval of the August 29th regular board meeting agenda. So moved.
Second. Minus.
Who's gonna?
Minus item I.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That was unanimous. Moving on to member comments. Brittany, do we have any member comments today?
We do not.
Fantastic. Okay, then we will move down to the consent calendar, which currently has the July 25th regular board meeting minutes and the legal committee recommendations, which we do not have any for this week. Can I get a motion for the consent calendar? So moved.
Second.
Perfect. All those in favor? 6-0. Unanimous. Thank you. And let's go ahead and move to our CEO, Mr. Cummins.
Really don't have very much for you tonight. We've got a really busy agenda with the capital reserve study. We gave you a couple of update items in there just around some survey and tot kind of work and other things, but happy to take any questions if you have any.
And one exciting item, Glade Tennis will open on Saturday. So we're excited to get Glade back up and running.
Fantastic. Any questions for our CEO? Okay. Short and sweet. Thank you very much. We will move down to item F, and we have some volunteers with us today that will be able to speak. Probably makes the most sense if we just go to the front of the room. Did I forget number comment? No. Okay. There was no.
There was not. Sorry, do not.
I'm not going anywhere. Trevor, we have the chair of the environmental committee here to say a few words on behalf of Asha and minutes.
Perfect. And let's go ahead and start that now.
Sorry, it's hard to hear.
Apologies.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarika, the chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and there's one applicant, new applicant for our EAP today, and one second term. Well, yeah. For EAC as well. Asha is the new applicant, and I just wanted to say that I'm really glad she reached out, has attended the initiative and attended some of our meetings, and has decided to apply. That's great to have a range of experiences and please on the committee. So really glad for the partner, and I'm very glad to have her on the board. The other applicant for a second term is Ines, and she unfortunately doesn't need to be here. She was intending to appear before the board, but with this kind of thing, she can't make it. But he has been an absolutely fantastic volunteer, not just with EAC, but the center as well, and he's been involved with ERA, the Fairfax Invasive Removal Alliance, and which marries up very well with EAC and Western Association. So I'm definitely happy that she has decided to reapply and will support her application.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your comments. Thanks for being here. Asha, would love to have you come down and say a few words about yourself, and then we'll see if any board members have any questions.
Hi, my name is Asha Sundarajan, and my husband and I decided to move to Weston. We've been listing here for the last 30 years because his family lives down here. I'm from Manhattan, and we wanted a space where I didn't want to water my grass, but I wanted to live among the trees. So Weston seemed to be a natural choice for us. In terms of environment, I'm actually well, first I was a technologist, then I went to Columbia and did my master's in education, and then was a teacher for several years, also an entrepreneur in between. And now I'm like really passionate about environment, and the last 4 years I've been experimenting in several different ways. Moved to India actually to learn about permaculture and learn a lot more about different things. And I've also we went to Texas, Cerrado to understand regenerative agriculture. This morning we were up bright and early at Virginia State University down in Petersburg because they had a agriculture and farming exposition or exhibition, what have you. So I'm super thrilled to be a part of a community that cares so deeply, not just about the environment, but also about its neighborhood. I've heard a lot about, oh, you're in Weston, they're not going to allow you to do something. And I think that's great because I think we care enough to say something. So that's really something that I love about. So I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Do you have any specific goals that projects or things that you'd like to set your timeline on?
Yes, so one is climate, and the other one that I was speaking with Rebecca was also about composting, and she also asked me to look at the RAZOR report, so I was just thinking a couple of things to start with slowly and steadily. And then I did meet Karen and I think Julie about the parks, but I said I'll stay with the environment.
Thank you.
That's great. Yes, Director Johnson.
I guess to build on your climate question, what would you like to do within the Weston community from a climate standpoint?
So from first, I just even want to understand where we are from a climate standpoint, because really we have to do X, Y, Z. So what I saw from the RAZOR report and the committee meeting that I attended, I realized that the report that they were making was actually something equivalent to like the top 4 cities which are doing having a climate budget today, where they are actually setting up goals for themselves, and breaking it down into smaller parts that is achievable. So top of the hat, my favorite thing would be to actually have, if it even works, like the solar panel in almost all the shopping malls for 2 reasons. One, that the cars will not be hot, and then but that's like out there kind of a goal because it's not within our reach, but within our reach, really actually just thinking about how we can save our forests that are there. How we can improve the water quality, like even take a check of where we are. And I believe from what I saw from the RAZOR report, it's being done really well. So just keeping those parameters in the first place, I think will be a place where I want to just understand the community, understand what our abilities are and what constraints we have to work with, and then work from there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for being here. The way it works as far as tonight, we won't actually be making any decisions until executive session, and that might be quite a bit into the evening, so feel free to depart. We'll let you know how the vote turns out, and we'll provide you with that feedback. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we'll go to the next person here that we have in person. That would be Mr. Kerr. This would be for the chair of the fiscal committee.
Correct.
All right. Floor is yours.
Okay. Well, for those who don't know me, my career has really been in corporate finance. Most of my life working for billion-dollar companies, in doing budgeting, plans, and internal control. And then I spent probably the last 10 years, 10 to 15, doing consulting for small businesses, non-profit places, putting in ledgers and systems to help them run their business. So that's my background. I joined the fiscal committee in 2017. And I have been chair for the last 3 or 4 years.
Any questions for Mr. Kerr?
I
Yeah, please.
thank you for continuing to be willing to put up with RA and the board and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We do appreciate all of your time.
I thank you very much, Mark. I'm only doing it because Lisa is re-upping. And Katie is a fantastic contributor, so just so you know.
Excellent.
Good old fashioned package deal. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And same applies. We'll let you know later on, so you don't have to stick around. Lisa, you're next.
Hello, I am Lisa Picklefeld. I have been a Restonian for about 16 years. I've been a member of the fiscal committee for 5-ish years, 4 or 5 years. I've been a co-chair of the committee for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I'm only here because Dave was volunteering to be chair. And you know, I just believe it's important to serve our community. I have a 25-year career in accounting and finance. My last 10-ish years have been running finance and accounting teams for small businesses. I'm now in an operational role at Iridium. And I just want to contribute and use my skills to give back. I'm super excited about what the next couple of years have in store for us, because we have, I think, the strongest full management team that we've had in so long. And every time we're at management and fiscal committee, there's a lot of new, very outside the box thinking that we've seen in prior years. So I'm super excited for that. I'm glad we have a CFO in place this year. So there's a lot of positive things happening, and I hope I can use my skills to contribute in a positive manner.
Excellent. Any questions for Ms. Picklefeld?
Thank you.
The same thank you applies. Wonderful. So thank you both for being here. Appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and make those votes. Oh, sorry.
Can I make a statement about both of them?
Yeah, please.
I've worked with Lisa for at least 4 years and Dave for the entire term that I've been both on the board and as treasurer. I found them to be incredibly engaged people, thoroughly professional, thoughtful, and strong advocates of RA and the financial operations and sufficiency of the organization. And I would strongly recommend that the board reappoint them as chair and vice chair.
May I ask one question? It's co-chair, not vice chair, correct? Like there is technically a distinction there, so I just want to
Fair.
make sure.
Yep. It is co-chair.
Okay,
Vice chair. It's vice chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
it is vice chair, okay. This is listed here as co-chair, so I just wanted to double check.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay.
Appreciate that.
I just want to make sure, we're all on the same page.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and turn it back over to staff real quick to tee up Hunterwood's facility renaming.
So just a quick update from staff here. So at not the last meeting, but the full board meeting in July, the idea was floated to bring back an item regarding renaming what used to be the Hunters Woods Ball Field. The project has been completed, it's open, it's very successful, but it is no longer a ball field. So we heard some member comment about perhaps renaming it to Hunter's Meadow. Staff are sort of viewing this as just a change because of the way the facility is used. We're not evaluating the term Hunter's Woods necessarily. It would be different than Shadowwood Pool process or the Lake Audubon process that's coming up. So really just turning it over to the board. We feel this is a board conversation, but wanted to get those items out. So turning it back over to all of you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just open it up to a discussion here for a second. And Director Perry, let's start with you.
I certainly can respect why we would want to change it from ball field. It hasn't been used for a ball field probably the entire time I've been in Reston, which is 14 years now. I appreciate the member suggestion of changing it to, for example, Hunter's Woods Meadow. If I recall, though, we did open that butterfly meadow platform over in the same area. So while I recognize not everyone sees that as Hunter's Woods Meadow, I just want to make sure that we're aware of that when it comes to suggesting names, to make sure that we're all on the same page so that, you know, when people say Hunter's Wood Meadow, are they referring to that little butterfly meadow, which Chris and Keene beautifully put the platform for, or are we referring to the new kind of walking trail, exercise, meditation area, for example? So I just think that's something for all of us to consider when we move forward with this. Notice I didn't say if.
When? I'm all for the idea to change it as well. However, I do think that in order to get a wide range of names, we should probably open it up to the community. I'm not suggesting that we go through a long process with a number of meetings, things along those lines. I am, however, suggesting that perhaps we could use the new website. I think there's the survey function on the website to gather names. We don't want to have like, you know, Parky McParkface, like we've seen in a number of other things. So perhaps we can limit it to a number of maybe 5 or 6 options for the community to pick from. But I'd like to do it, and I'd like to do it sooner rather than later. But I would also like ask the staff if we can get an estimate for the cost of what the change will mean to the overall community. That's something that even, you know, something as small as this, we hear from the community that they'd like to know the cost. So I'd like to make sure that we communicate that as clearly as possible.
Okay.
Am I correct? There's no signage there, correct?
No.
Okay.
There is not.
Okay.
Can I ask, what signage, if any, is there at the Butterfly Meadow that was already opened? None.
Probably none either.
Well, I think there is one.
Is there something?
Do you know?
I can't get to it. So I'll have to trust you.
I recall having walked by it, and I think there is a sign there.
Chris is looking uncertain.
I'm not positive that facts, but I have to verify, but I don't believe we've installed some just general meadow informational signage, but not necessarily a naming of the site per se.
So, right.
There is.
Okay, so cost, return with the cost and perhaps what a small process might look like. Okay.
Thank you.
Can do.
And sooner rather than later.
Tomorrow or
No, I don't have to go that.
we'll see if we can pull together for the 12th,
Okay,
see where we are there.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that should be extraordinarily detailed.
Okay.
Seems no question here.
We're good with not running it through track. We're good with it just coming back to the board
On a name change.
change. I just wanted to do that.
Just as an aside, you may hear from PrAC if we don't. So just saying.
If he's not here to ask if they were interested.
How about we request via email PrAC's opinion on whether they have input on
That sounds good.
Is that acceptable?
Yes, and I'm not sure a name change is the right
Yeah, I'm with you.
terminology, but a naming for this newly repurposed facility.
We can get Prac to weigh in, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Prac could give us some suggestions on the names as well.
That too, good point.
Consensus? Good,
Yep, comfortable.
good,
Good.
moving forward. Let's go ahead and talk item H, the 2024 reserve study.
Okay, so I'm just going to introduce this quickly and then turn it over to Chris. So we're a little out of cycle with the reserve study in that fiscal committee has reviewed the reserve study and endorsed or accepted the reserve study. We talked about the reserve study a bit last week at the joint meeting with the fiscal committee, mostly around numbers and things related to the study. Just some things to keep in mind for tonight. The reserve study is not the capital improvement plan. The reserve study is a reference point for staff. One of the great things we get from the reserve study is a listing of our components, meaning our assets in the association, and what it might cost to replace them, which keeps Chris from having to do that work on his own. So it's a great reference point for us. The reserve study is a requirement, something that we have to do every 5 years. It's really a financial planning tool. As you look at the reserve study, you'll see in the further out years, in the near term, our spending that we've had in capital planning sort of stays stagnant with what we're sort of accustomed to, but then you start to run into pool replacements, which is a big consideration given that we have 15. So just for tonight, this is a study that we're required to do. I think the work is complete. I think the work was well done. We have a representative from the consultant here to answer any specific questions. But from there, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, so from the presentation I provided, like I said, it sort of outlines sort of the baseline of what a reserve study is, how it functions, what's in it, kind of give you a little bit of a comparison between different kind of funding methodologies, which is really the true hallmark of what a reserve space is supposed to really provide you between the components, what we have, how much they cost, and what it could cost you in the future, and some suggestions on how you may get there through the funding. But it's not necessarily, it's not a rule, it's not a requirement, it's a data point, and otherwise larger conversation. It's not a required maintenance schedule. It just uses a combination of facility inspections, industry standards, and it kind of puts all these together in sort of a good educated, idea of what you should do or could do moving forward. But outside of that, I'm happy to take any questions. I've got Doug here from DMA Reserves to also assist with anything you may have.
When utilizing this tool, what weight are you placing on it, and are you using your internal knowledge of Reston to recognize that there may be some, I won't use the word flaws, but things that do not directly or specifically align with how we do things in Reston? So how are you managing or juggling those two pieces?
Yeah. So yeah, we do use the study a fair amount in terms of getting us sort of the baseline schedule. Okay, there's 1,600 different assets here at Reston. It helps us identify all of them because not one person can necessarily know every single asset all through the area. So at least gives us a nice map to look through. In terms of the actual functional timings of replacements, the maintenance of it, is a really close partnership that staff and DMA had, especially in the 2019 study was first being built on. Here are our standard practices. We are a unique organization that we have our own maintenance, staff. We have all this background experience, historical knowledge that we can impart a lot of our. Okay, we know that we do color codes every 7 years. Asphalt has to be replaced every 21, floor replacements every 42, and that is baked into the reserve study. There are other elements that we don't have a lot of background historicals on, and so that's where DMA's expertise and their experience from industry standards, other communities they've looked at in terms of what they think it would be in terms of cycle or cost expense. And they also have a much larger database to pull from for costing things than we would ever have, just because they have all the RSVs, other data points, industry access and information, and they can interpret it and seen it. So it's valuable information that we do use, and it helps us, I feel, tremendously in creating the CIP, but it's not the overarching driver of it, I would say.
One point I would add, Margaret, is a less sophisticated organization. Like if you were just a cluster, you might use the reserve study as your plan. We have 50 homes, we're just using this, but for us, it's something that we reference. It's a great help for us, but for as sophisticated as we are, it's just a different thing for us as our.
I had some questions. because I went through the fiscal presentation, which was much longer than this one. But I had some questions about how this just new study affects our funding of capital items, because this is used in our current resolution to do that. And I think that there might need to be some tweaks to that 10-year average funding model. I'm not sure we're at a point right now where we would just change a resolution. I think it needs some research and study and input from staff. So I did ask on the second point before the motion, Peter, some questions over the phone this week about the spend for 2025. And he said that staff will be able to bring us back a recommendation and it may be different than you should fund at the 10-year average. So I just want to make sure that we're prepared that we might be asked to do something different. So if there are any questions you have about the reserve study and what it says that our 10-year average should be, this might be a good opportunity to ask, or just keep this in your mind as we get to the recommendation later.
Director Crowe, thanks for joining. Sorry for your troubles. We are talking about item H, the 2024 reserve study. And both Pete and Chris have done a small presentation for the board. We also have Doug Green. Thanks. We also have Doug here as an expert from the company that provided the study. We're still open for questions of either Chris or Doug or Pete.
Motion for us to accept the reserve study.
There is that recommendation for staff to accept.
Second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous, 7-0. Any other motions on this particular topic? I know there's another recommended. Anyone wants to bring that forward? Okay.
I am happy to make the motion, but I have some discussion. So move to use the reserve study as a guide to build a pool replacement plan and associated amenities plan that considers recent pool replacements in partnership with the fiscal committee and to provide an overview to the board of directors no later than June of 2025.
Second. Okay.
Okay.
I'll second it for just a matter of.
I just have a comment. I have a comment. I am leery of the motion, not from a perspective that we don't need a pool replacement plan. But I think that fiscal really looks to the board for guidance on that type of big expenditure. So I've seen them play with concepts of pools before, and it always ends up back at the board level. And so I was feeling if you guys wanted to move forward with something like this, that they would need a lot of guidance from us in order to come up with this plan. And so it might behoove us to work through it as a board, but I do support the concept that we need to get a plan in place. We've had a lot of requests from the community, from fiscal for direction. It comes up every year during our budget discussions of what does this look like? How's it going to work? And so I do support having a plan in place.
I'll defer to CEO comments at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's a couple good concepts in that. I just to offer some how it all fits together. So one of the things I am most concerned about are the major drivers of our CIP and how we collect over time. So if you look at the reserve study without getting into the numbers and whether those are accurate or not, it starts to identify where the big ticket items are likely to come because of age span. So as we've talked about, well, do we like the 10-year average concept? Do we not like the 10-year average concept? How does that affect an assessment year to year? What's missing and what we've tried to do this year is embark on creating a much more deliberate strategic thought process for how to do CIP planning as compared to, I'm interested in a project and we fund it next year, or we collect for projects and then take them out of the 10-year, push them out to year 13. We've already collected some of the money, but not all of it. So we think there's a lot of strong ideas in thinking about how to do pools. People want to talk about, because they are generally the biggest cost drivers, but there are other major maintenance things too. So thinking about it holistically is on our radar screen. So why do I mention that? We are working on our 25 plans now. There's a concept to do something just like this, whether it's just pool centric or how to get to a far more strategic CIP for the 26-27 biennial budget. So the only thing I'd offer is the main concept we're already working on how to think about building into the work plan. It's the June date. How does that fit with your study sessions and the budget process, assuming it would take effect for 26, that kind of thing. But the concept, I think, sounds good. And I know Pete, Ed, and I have been talking about this a lot. So anything from you guys?
Yeah, I would just add, the motion made its way into the packet because Dave Kerr, who was just here, has made the recommendation a few times that we should really look at pools. And it was said last Wednesday, so I didn't want to lose that. There was some specific information in the packet about pool replacements and what that might look like. Regardless of the motion, as Max said, there's going to be lots of work done on pool replacements in the next few years. So I think we can move forward without the motion tonight and bring it back for a different time.
Director Farrell.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to completely lose my place. I agree that a plan would be amazing, and I do think we should continue moving forward. I also know that there is a lot currently on the plate, and I think to add another demand of you must have this by X date at this moment in time is unrealistic and would be pushing things through just. But I do encourage you all to continue on this topic you're on. Just like that beautiful park master plan, which I am also hugely in favor of.
Go to Director Farrell first, and then I'll come back to Director Flash.
Motion that the initiative that I read about, and forgive me that I didn't have a chance to look at the board package more than scan it on screen, nor the motions that are being made tonight. It struck me that we have a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee that, at least in my experience, ought to be more upfront or taking more of a lead in this conversation than actually the fiscal. Because if we take a pool and we say, well, what are we going to do with this thing? What are we going to do with Golf Course Island, which has been renewed, or one of the other processes? If we want, Lyndon Johnson used to say, if you want people on the landing, you got to have them on the takeoff. And for me, that means something today. And I think that the public process that we have supposedly in place for PrAC to undertake needs to be in front of how we finance it. Because what our membership tells us they want to see in a pool renewal, whether it's at Uplands or Tall Oaks or Golf Course Island, just to pick three off the top that are relatively old, is going to drive how much we have to refinance and how we refinance it. So to me, I'm not going to be able to support the motion because I think PrAC needs to be the leader, and then fiscal can come back and help us figure out how to pay for it.
Director Flashman.
I was going to ask what input you would have in terms of timing.
Of bringing the work back.
Plan?
No,
It's not real
I
busy.
mean, you'll have to work, if we go with going before PrAC, having PrAC do a lot of work up, your input is going to be important, I think. And timing becomes, because of the motion, an issue.
I think regardless of any motions, following budget adoption this year, we're going to start working on a pools replacement plan. And I appreciate Director Farrell bringing PrAC into the mix because PrAC will play a huge role as well. I think concurrently with fiscal, PrAC and fiscal can look at it together, but I don't see why before next year's budget, we're not prepared for this. So a year from now, I think it's going to take that long. to figure out all of the variables. Mac has talked a lot about financing. Is that an option here? Because if you do look at our investments in capital over time, stay pretty consistent until you start talking about pools. I mean, we can replace footbridges and ball fields and things all day long. It's not an issue. The pools really do cause a different problem for the association, but I could see a year from now being a solid timeline for us.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part.
I said a year from now would be a solid timeline to bring that sort of plan back.
Could, so I don't want to get ahead of the vote and the motion, but regardless of if this passes, it sounds like there's action that staff is taking.
That's right.
Could we potentially put this on the parking lot back for January? Roughly to pick a date that's past budget, past much of casino
Sure.
maybe, and bring it back up. And if there's nothing to talk about, there's nothing to talk about, but potentially that could be an opportunity for
Mr. Vice President, would you entertain a motion to defer the pending motion to the first meeting in January?
Can we do December? And the reason I say December is because Mac brings back the annual update to the work plan. And it seems like this might go on a work plan, so it might be a better meeting.
So defer the pending motion to the first meeting in December.
Yeah.
Only one in December.
It's
To the
December.
December board meeting. That'd be my
Okay.
vote.
Yeah.
If I may.
Need a second.
Second.
second discussion.
Well, I really appreciate the work of PrAC. I think it is the responsibility of the board to set the strategy, of the organization. And that's way beyond the finances. You know, that's of secondary importance. It's very important, but the first decision is, you know, what's the future? What features are they gonna have? And how are we gonna sell it to the community, which then becomes a track issue as to where we set. But all the advisory committees, including the fiscal committee, serve at the pleasure of the board. So.
Thank you. So we have a deferral on the table. All those in favor? That's 7-0, unanimous. And I think we're moving on from item H. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so Director Farrell, we did remove item I, which we were looking to bring back up in new business and look to get that onto another agenda. So we're going to be moving to item J, which is draft 2024-2025 election calendar. And we'll turn that over to, I guess that's technically Jalal, but maybe I'll turn it over to staff for a quick briefing on what we're looking at, and then we can.
So I'll let Peter, I think, speak to some of this. I just want to put in context too. Remember that we've also been trying to schedule a meeting invite the elections committee to ask and answer a number of questions. We've honed in on a September 12th agenda, so you'll see that in your draft agenda later for new business. So should any questions about this, just understand the sequencing, they will actually be here. So if you want input from them on the calendar as well. The reason it's on tonight's agenda, it was on an agenda last meeting or 2 meetings ago, you asked for deferral to tonight. We had anticipated the EC would already have been here. That of course didn't happen for a number of reasons as they were doing some of their work. So that's just how the sequencing is what it is. And then I'll let Peter speak a little bit to the calendar.
So just quickly, we had planned to put this on consent, and I believe there was some questions or thoughts that wanted to be shared. So the only thing I would offer, I'm not sure if the conversation tonight is about the actual schedule or about times of meetings or things like that, but the one item to consider is everything works backwards from the annual meeting. So that's the date that we announce the winners and everything there. So just keep that in mind as you look at the schedule. Everything sort of starts from the annual meeting and works backwards. So I'll turn it over to her comment.
I know there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen in regards to elections and elections committee overall. Tonight, the focus really should be on the schedule at hand and anything that we want to do more fully as far as the schedule is concerned. Some of that might have overlap appreciate that, but if we can try to limit the discussion to that tonight, and then next meeting we'll have EC here. We'll be able to dig deeper into some of the questions that the board is interested in asking. So I'll open it up, Director Clark.
Yeah, there are a lot of issues, and if we're bringing them in on the 12th, there was I don't know what it was, it was an Excel spreadsheet that I happened to get.
From his-
Yeah, which is unreadable, again, because it's like 4.1. And there are a lot of recommendations in there that I don't think are consistent with our governing documents council. And we want guidance from council on some of those recommended suggestions. Executive sessions for certifying candidates, et cetera. I don't think it's consistent with poll. So when they come in on the 12th, I'd like to have the benefit of your insights on that, but I think the whole board ought to have be able to read the document, which today I had to use, I mean, not today, obviously, I was flying over Kansas, but when I read it, magnifying glass, and there's some really significant recommendations in that package, many of which I disagree with. But the one thing on the calendar, Mr. Vice President, is, and the feedback that I've gotten from people interested in being on election committee is, these 3 o'clock meetings don't work for anybody. And I think they need, if we're gonna be adopting this calendar, we're locking in 3 o'clock meetings. So I'm happy to have this calendar adopted, except for the fact that I don't want to lock in a 3 o'clock meeting. I think if we're gonna ask volunteers to participate in this elections committee, we need to have those meetings at a time when the volunteers can actually show up. And 3 o'clock is the middle of the workday. And so I know there's conversation amongst the elections committee to set their meetings, but I just don't want to have these 3 o'clock meetings locked in stone by this board.
Yeah.
I think just because we had heard that issue might come up, my understanding, look to Pete and Tony, is that the committee itself will be able to set its own time.
I would like to make a suggestion. Is that we could potentially adopt a schedule with taking out all mentions of time minus the 5 p.m. deadline for filing campaign. And if we remove the times, then you have the commitment, you have the date, and then the times can be set at any point. And that includes the candidate photo shoots, right? Like if heaven forbid something needs to change and instead of 5:30 to 7:30 to 6 to 8 or whatever, it allows that flexibility for all those involved. So, my recommendation would be to move forward with removing all times listed except for the 5 p.m. deadline for filing candidacy.
On January 30th.
Yes, January 31st, sorry, January 30th, yes.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Yes.
I had really good intentions to write all of my comments and send it out, but that didn't happen this week. So some of the things on the calendar that I thought were notable to me were there's a comms campaign on the calendar leading up to candidates applying, but there's no comms campaign in anything after. And I know that especially for Director Johnson was a concern, and so I wanted to see if there was anything that you were interested in giving feedback to the staff on what that should look like, or if you wanted it on an official calendar. The second piece is the elections committee has been talking about taking on some additional tasks. And I'm not seeing any of their tasks added to the calendar, but they've been talking about, where that line is. And some of it is, testing of the online system and things like that. And I thought I would actually see them add some tasks of their own and deadlines of their own on here. And I'm afraid if they don't deadline themselves, then we might miss some of the the administrative connections we have with our vendors. And so I want to make sure that they're thinking about building those things into this process because they've been talking about it. And then the third piece is the Friday, February 28th date. It says that the ballots will be mailed to members. I've gotten a lot of feedback over the years from members because the actual ballot or the election opens the next day, that they're not going to get their ballots by March 1st, and then they start calling or emailing me and saying, but I didn't get my ballot, how can I vote? And so I actually think we might need to push up the ballot mailing date so that we have a reasonable expectation that ballots could be in mailboxes by the opening of the election.
What would your suggestion be on that, given the USPS?
I think that they're mailed from Baltimore, I believe, so I don't think we're talking a cross-country time frame. But I'm not positive where they're mailed from. If they're mailed from Baltimore, I think you can put it up 2 more days before. I mean, is that
Sorry, I didn't-
concern from a candidate perspective, that they didn't get that extra day of that, before someone fills out a ballot on paper. I didn't know why that date was so close to begin with.
Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, that's where.
Pennsylvania.
So nothing.
Please, Director Patu.
A lot of the ballots are sent out more and more through email. So the very day that they're sent out, they're received, and people are used now to voting on that very same day. So you'll have a disjunctive. If you send it out at a different time, they will have lots of time in the mail to vote. But I think that ballots should be available on the same day, or be sent out on the same day, so that we have a clear date on which the election begins. And if people want to get the ballots early, they simply say, here, send it to me by email, and it's very easy for them to do.
Do we have an idea of the breakdown? Because I didn't think that electronic was as big as.
So currently, going by the record of eligibility date, that determines, that's from the date that the ballots are mailed out, which is March 1. Based on that timeline, we pull the report for the member data set as of the date of record of eligibility. So that's the cutoff point for us. Once we pull that information then gets sent to IntelliScan so that they can create the test voting portal. And that time takes about a week and a half for them to do, depending if they don't have any questions or corrections to anything. So it's about a week and a half for them to create the voting portal and get everything set up. That includes with the members' picture or the candidates' photos and their statements and everything gets uploaded. Then they send us the test data spreadsheet. And then go through and we test that data just to make sure that it's taking through the proper steps, whether you're voting for one candidate or abstaining or whatever have you. So that process takes maybe a day, maybe 2, if you have more than one person doing the testing. Provided there's no changes that are needed, which is seldom, we usually do have corrections for them to make. It may take them a day or so to make those corrections or updates. That puts us at about 2.5 weeks before everything's ready to go and the ballots can be mailed out.
Can you repeat, what is the date of record for eligibility?
It's on the calendar.
Yeah.
We're just below the deadline for filing candidacy.
What date is it?
January 30th.
It's the 30th.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm sorry, she had said March 1st and that was.
That's the day that the ballots are mailed out.
Right, so
So
January
10 days from the
30th.
date.
thank you.
But that can also be, the board can determine the record of eligibility dates too, so if that date doesn't work for whatever reasons, it can be changed.
Okay, so. Can I, Brittany, just, because you deal with this a lot and we thank you very much for all that you do. I see that currently the paper ballots are scheduled to be mailed to members on February 28th. Because voting opens March 1st.
Saturday.
Okay. Based on, I mean, obviously, if pictures aren't being taken until February 3rd, you know, there's some things going on here. There's time involved with all of that, et cetera, et cetera. What is the possibility of paper ballots being mailed on, say, Thursday, February 27th
Mhm.
for the election opening on March 1st? Would that one day cause potential stress?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Mailing the ballots on,
A day earlier.
One day
Early.
February 27th.
okay,
With the intent that they would potentially, probably, coming from Pennsylvania, arrive in people's mailboxes on Saturday afternoon.
that's being very generous to the USPS.
I do not disagree at all, but I'm trying to, if we could find a nice medium that's more than 24 hours. But not, but still allows for the pictures and the testing and the printing and the
Yeah,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I mean, it's not a, you know, we can turn it around in 24 hours type of a thing. So,
but,
what is that possibility?
or even the 26th.
I was trying to be
I
more
understand.
generous to our staff and less generous to USPS, but yes.
So, I would say that's a really tight window. I mean, it's tight as it is already,
Okay,
just because February obviously is the shortest month. And everything is crammed into February, right? So candidate photo shoots, I mean, right after the candidates are certified on the 30th, provided that there's no changes, like there's a talk of an appeals process. If that's implemented and say there is an appeal, that could take a couple of days. That throws off the course of events, right? Which would delay it, which would mean the mailing is delayed, possibly the annual is delayed. So, I mean, all of these things you take into consideration, from the photo shoot to all of that data being combined, sent over to the counting agency for them to create the portal, to test the data. I mean, it's a very tight window.
and I'm sorry, one last question.
Please.
I don't necessarily expect you to have this answer, okay? Do you know of a reason why the calendar has always been made so tight? Versus if we back everything up a week,
Mm-hmm.
then that gives a week. You see what I'm saying? Like, if we back everything up to starting September 12th, that's building in an extra week. So I'm just curious if we know why the calendar has been built so tight.
It's my understanding that just voting is always open as of March 1.
I'm not suggesting changing March.
No, I'm just saying, I think because of that opening and where it sets the record eligibility for us to be able to pull data, that kind of determines everything.
Except that we can set all those. So I did have a question because, as Director Fleischman mentioned, many people are voting by email, and because March 1st is a Saturday, I have no idea. Is the practice that the email would go out on the Saturday? Or since that's a weekend, would it not go out until the Monday? How do we align this with the online?
So I know, this past election, it was kind of a similar thing where, I think like the election closed on a weekend, so we had to bump it out. Kind of the same situation here. If March 1 being on a Saturday is, I believe for people who are doing it electronically, it shouldn't be an issue, but if you want to make it uniform, so that the day that the ballots are mailed and the day that the people can vote, I mean, it's the same day generally every year. Or it's the same time frame every year. That can happen too. We can do it on the 28th or whichever date, it's decided. But like I said, you would have to make a determination on if you want to push it back.
I mean, the benefit that emails though, is that they can be scheduled to go out even when
Exactly.
nobody's working.
I will say that there's a lot of times where people will actually call the county agency because their ballot got lost in the mail. Or something like that, and they have to provide a certain amount of information to the county agency, like they ask specific questions.
Right.
To verify the candidate is who, or the person is who they say they are, before they will give them like their username and password information, just in case they have run up against the deadline. Sometimes people wait till the last minute to vote, they threw it away, they wanna vote, they can still get the information even if they don't have the paper ballot.
Okay.
Probably not on a Saturday, though.
I'm not on Saturday.
But, so we have the flexibility as a board to set the record date. And it
Yeah.
says that it's 70 days ahead we can go to. If we count, we have built in 59 days. And so we have an 11 days of wiggle room. So why, is there a reason why we shouldn't move that back 11 days, which gives staff 11 more days to do this process that takes a long time? And I recognize that it was probably put on the calendar because it's the same day as the filing of the candidacy, but what do we,
They're not-
like that?
they're not linked.
They're not linked, so why can't we just move the record date back and build in that extra time?
I think council is looking at that for us to try and give us some advice, Mr. Vice President.
While he's doing that, did you have another question?
No, that was it.
Point, Director Johnson?
So when we say that we're doing e-reminders to paperless voting members, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Electronically, IntelliScan, email them a reminder if they haven't voted.
Okay, so we're not doing an actual campaign to reach out to folks to get them to vote. That's not, 'cause I didn't see that.
That's a separate campaign. I think last year there was a lot of that going on, like the Friday RA News. Posts were being made there. Kara and her team were handling a lot of that, pushing that out to our socials and whatnot.
Can that be, cause I also noticed there's, the advertising pushes, there's 3 advertising pushes. And get out the vote efforts included in the calendar.
Just not necessarily a detailed calendar, it's more so just a overview.
Highlights, yeah.
Not that it can't be done, but I think it would just clog up.
So perhaps the answer would be to remove any of the marketing type dates listed in the calendar and only include, for example, the postcard reminders and the e-reminders.
You're suggesting take out the,
Well, I'm suggesting it could be an option to, rather than to include more into this, if you take out those 3 pieces, you could then have a separate marketing calendar on elections that doesn't clog this schedule up, which is really geared for the elections committee, not for our communications staff.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Yeah, my question was there because there were other, marketing items.
Yeah.
If there were no marketing items, I would want to have that, a separate conversation.
And I think that would be appropriate, but I think that because this is really designed for elections committee and staff dealing with the election specifically, a separate marketing calendar would be appropriate where those 3 items would go along with, you know.
other
don't
get out the
forget to
vote, yeah.
Council, any clarification on the 70 days? Or any
So I think it goes off of the annual meeting. The bylaws say that the election results will be noticed at the annual meeting. And the bylaws state that the annual meeting will be held the 2nd Tuesday in April or such date in April and such place and time the board of directors may determine. So that's the front end date that you're, or the back end date that you're looking at.
But then the record eligibility is a really complex formulation in the.
That's the record eligibility is. Courts of indulgence.
While we give Tony some indulgence, is there any way to adjust the temperature in this place? I appreciate those of you in suits may find it very comfortable, but those of us not in suits are not extraordinarily comfortable per se.
Getting cold.
It's a
I have
little
little
chilly.
slumps.
Let me call my temperature person.
Thanks, Kate.
It's locked.
We have, that's a job for Chris.
Okay.
It was freezing last week as well.
Yeah, it was a little chilly.
So April 8th.
Vote it down.
Brittany was holding on for as long as.
I have given you guys about an hour at this temperature, so.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Tony here.
The close of business, the 10th business day before the effective date of the notice to members of the referendum, unless the board of directors shall deem otherwise.
That's the referendum part, there's, I believe, the record date for annual.
But unless we do otherwise.
And the reason I'm somewhat, dangerously familiar is in the conversation about setting the voter rolls and knowing that voting, wanting to get that voting roll, and that our recent resolution about requiring the landlords to tell us the tenant's name, we set those dates so that the record of eligibility would be able to be compiled, including the tenants. So that's why I don't think it's.
But
Do you think it may shift on
that's the
things?
one that we went off of. We didn't go off, the annual meeting doesn't have a record eligibility date. The annual meeting does not. It's open to any member.
Right,
But in order to vote, you have to be eligible to vote as of that date. So if I buy my house and move in
After the eligibility
on
date.
the eligibility date, I don't get to vote.
Correct.
So, but when that date is set, I thought was driven by this very complex formula in the deed.
Oh, I see.
But it says-
The board of directors shall not fix the record date more than 70 days before the date of action
Right.
requiring a determination of the members, nor shall the board of directors set a record date retroactively.
And
Unless
Jennifer's saying
otherwise-
it's currently set at 59, so why would we not push it out to the full 70 and give staff those extra 11 days to move forward?
So.
Because by 11 days, you're denying people right to vote.
Mr. Vice President. I believe Director Flashman just answered Director Perry's question. To the extent that you move the dates back 11 days, anybody who acquires their house or moves in the intervening 11 days, it doesn't get to vote.
Okay, but they're not getting, if they move in within that 59 days, they don't get, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean.
That's the question. If you're comfortable with that, okay, fine.
Yeah, because it,
All I'm saying is,
Yeah.
that's why
Okay.
it's at 59, was to maximize the number of people who could vote.
but it puts our staff in a
I-
tight place.
Yeah, I personally, while I appreciate the people who may move in that 11 days will have to wait a year. So be it. The people who move in within the 59 days have to wait a year.
The general tendency is not to lengthen the time period during which you must register to vote, but to shorten it. And in some jurisdictions, you may register on the very same day you vote. And if
But this
we
is different.
extend it by up to 70 days, we're going counter to the general tendency to encourage people to vote and have them vote. And the registration becomes an act that is almost simultaneous with voting. Obviously, in our case, that's somewhat different. Because there's a lot of preparation in order to determine who's eligible to vote and then to go forward with preparing the ballots and the rest of it.
So it sounds as though you prefer to put the extra stress on staff rather than than to provide those extra days, which may prevent a few people from voting. And that's okay. If that's the answer, that's okay. I'm just curious.
It's a balancing act, and it should be, to the extent possible, in favor of encouraging more people to vote.
We do have a motion that is currently on the floor, and it's debating. Are there any amendments to that motion?
Can you-
In the-
Remind us the motion, just to approve this without,
Yeah, the motion as it currently, and this is my understanding, as it currently stands,
without times,
is just this
stripping it of the times, stripping it of times.
stripping.
Except
Except the 5 p.m. filing deadline, of course.
And I would like an amendment, although I know Jennifer has a statement.
I think Jennifer has a list of. So I'll turn it over to the Director Just Eckroll.
I think you're gonna cover mine, so I will.
I hope. So a motion to amend and add on the removal of all of the advertising pushes from the calendar.
So that's the email reminders and the postcard?
No,
That would be the November 4th, November 25th, and January 6th advertising.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you, thank you.
In addition to change the Thursday, January 30th record eligibility date to January 21st, 2025 at 5 p.m. and to change the ballot mail date to members to 5 p.m. on February 26th.
Okay, is there a second to those amendments?
I'm sorry, the last one was changing the filing?
The ballot, the February 28th date, it says ballots mailed to move that to 5 p.m. on February 26th.
She's provided more time for staff.
Gotcha, and I would second that motion.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Yes, this is an amendment to the motion made by Director Perry that I seconded. It appears that April 8th is not a fixed date. It can be any time in April. So in pursuit of Director Perry's concern, we could push the annual members meeting out a week and get 7 days that way. So it's, raise a bridge over the river. I mean, we can do it either way in order to give the staff more time and at the same time preserve the maximum number of opportunities for people to become eligible to vote. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not going to make that motion, but I think that's another way of approaching the problem. The other thing is in the original motion that Director Perry made, it was taking out all the dates.
All the
except-
times.
All the times. Forgive me. Thank you for the correction. On the 30th, I think we also have to keep the 5 o'clock deadline on March 31st.
Sunday.
But
I
will hold that until we act on the motion that's pending, Mr. Vice President, and then I'll ask unanimous consent to make that change. But right now, we have an amendment pending.
Is there any greater discussion on the motion?
Well, Brittany has a statement, but I also have a.
I was just, was there a second to Jennifer?
There was,
I seconded, thank you.
So my concern with either the current amendment or John's suggestion is we're moving one day, but we're not moving the entire process. And so you're lengthening certain pieces, but you're not lengthening staff's time in reality. So my concern is just whether it's moved on the front end or the back end. I think certain dates then need to follow suit with moving a week either earlier or forward. For example, if we are holding, and maybe not, just hold on here. So if we're moving the deadline for filing candidacy, which will not change from the 30th, is that correct? All we're asking is that the record eligibility date move to the 21st.
because that's what impacts the ballots.
Okay.
And gives her.
Does it truly give 11 more days though, if we are then still not doing the photo shoots until the 3rd and all of that. Like it gives her 11 more days for here's who can vote, but it's not really giving 11 more days to prep all of the documentation. Are you following my train of thought there?
Just another,
Yes.
sorry. Also, people are coming off of the holidays too. So sometimes people aren't arriving, committee members who might still be out. So some of those dates there that you see, like the information session itself being the 14th, sometimes the people haven't come back from being with family for the holiday until like that second week of January. So whatever dates you guys do decide on, just keep that in mind that
So
the holidays are right before that period.
I'm not against either the forward or the end, but I think we need to really recognize what the end goal of that statement was, which was to provide staff a bit more time to actually get things done so that the mailing could go out. Go ahead.
And
I'm done.
I share that goal. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the hardest part of the crunch getting the addresses, the mailing addresses all organized, because that doesn't depend on when the photo shoot is. So
So that doesn't depend on what the photo shoot is, because we don't know who's going to be scheduled to do that until they've been certified,
right.
right? So this also falls back into if there's an appeals process that could impact that, which could delay the photos being taken, which could delay the rest of the process as well. So just because.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out whether, moving that one
What really
date,
helps.
the date of the record of eligibility, does that provide you any relief, even if we don't change other dates?
Moving the record of eligibility date does help.
It doesn't necessarily fix the issue.
Yeah, not necessarily.
So where do you see the crunch?
The crunch to me, I see is the deadline for filing the candidacy.
So you could potentially accept the record of eligibility date right where it is if that filing of candidacy changed?
I think so. I think that would help because it gives me a bit more time between when the candidate is certified. If that process does change, it gives additional time to go through whatever that process is. And then for us to pull data, pull information and get that over to county agency directors.
Would it be helpful for the board to table these motions and have you guys go back with all the comments that you've been hearing and come back next time? Or does that hurt you guys because we have the September 17th date coming up? Because I'm willing to have you guys kind of take our feedback and go rework it and come back with a new calendar if.
Like extend your.
To give, yes.
This has too many moving parts.
Right. With the, I would suggest the ultimate goal being to be able to postal mail the ballots 2 to 3 days prior to them arriving, hopefully in someone's mailbox, right? So if the goal is that they will have them on March 1st for when voting opens, you would want to see them mailed either the 27th or the 26th, because we know if they're mailed on the 28th, they are not getting into people's hands by March 1st.
If I may point something out, the back end, there is precedent for moving the date of the annual meeting. It has been done, and it was done within recent times. But it was moved to rather late for reasons that had to do with wanting to try to complete certain actions with the.
It was moved because of COVID.
It
was moved because of COVID.
It was, my recollection is that it was moved because the board wanted to complete the appointment of the director.
CEO.
The CEO, yeah. And they were trying everything they could to achieve that before the new board came in. It failed. But the date had already been moved. And so the new board was the one that actually made the determinations about the new CEO. And so if it can be moved for that reason, it can be moved for any reason. Because for me, that was no reason.
The bylaws don't make a.
The bylaws don't require any reason. You can move it because you want to move it.
So long as it's in April.
So that is a flexibility that is available. The only downside to that is that the board is extending its term by fiat and depriving those who would come in of a longer period of time for service.
The other downside is, I mean, if we move it a week later than April 8, it's April 15, which is a very busy day in the world for other reasons. So I'm not sure that sliding it a week.
You got your taxes out by then?
I have, but I hear that there's a mayhem at the post office.
There is something called procrastination.
Yeah,
You may have heard.
I may have heard of that. I personally would be very open to deferring this and allowing you all to take the suggestions and return with some dates that really would assist staff with having a little bit of wiggle room that I don't think they are granted currently.
Mr. Vice President, does Director Perry have a date in mind for this to come back to the board?
I would highly recommend at our next board meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second, any further discussion?
Any concern?
No, okay, great. All those in favor? Okay, 7-1.
Just one note on timing, we do need to get this resolved like at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So we.
Yeah, yeah, so we can start.
But I
Yeah,
do not want to continue to force staff to constantly be under
Okay.
an iron, a hot iron, every single time we go through this versus let's try and resolve that for future, for now and for the future.
Here.
Okay. Thank you. Item K is executive session, so I need a motion for executive session. Yes.
I will only make that motion. Thank you.
Anybody want to make that motion?
So I move that we convene into executive session to consult with legal counsel and discuss contractual and personnel matters.
So, any discussion? All those in favor? That's 7-0. It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take a 13-minute break here and reconvene at 8:10 in executive session.
13 minutes.
Well, it's because it takes me a really long time to get to the bathroom.
we are working towards a like, to put people on the spot to then vote no, like, that is our goal. Whether he sees the information that we put together ahead of time, that's fine, but like, I assume that environmental advisory person who was here to interview, that's Asha. Any questions, comments?
I could do that.
So Director Dodd,
When the phone's on, I don't hear the phone.
Yeah, we are live as far as that's concerned.
We are live.
There we go. September.
Unmuted.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thanks, everyone. Can I get a cleansing motion?
Yes. I'd like to move that the Reston Association Board of Directors certifies to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session of a contractual nature involving personnel matters or involving consultation with counsel were discussed or considered by the board during executive session.
Point of order, did you have contractual matters in there also?
She did.
You did, yeah.
Okay.
So nothing, yes, I did.
I didn't hear it, so.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, 7-0. Okay.
I've got some other, so I would like to, would you like 4 separate motions for these 4 volunteers? Okay. First, I would like to move to approve Asha Sundararajan, excuse me if I did not get that right, for the position of member to the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Second. Any discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor?
So.
I see.
Oh, you're discussing?
Did not have discussion.
Oh, right. Participating apparently.
All those in favor? Okay, that is 6. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, 6-0-1.
And Mr. President, Vice President, I'll abstain on all of these, I wasn't there in the end.
Okay, moving.
I'd like to move to approve Inez Nedeljkovic for the position of member to the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Then we'll have 1 abstain, so 6-0-1.
I move to approve David Carr for the position of Chair of the Fiscal Committee.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Again, we'll have 6-0-1.
And I move to approve Lisa Turkeltaub for the position of Vice Chair to the Fiscal Committee.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Great. 6-0-1. Okay. We now have an on-call engineering motion, potentially.
I'm happy to do that one as well. I move that in accordance with the association's policies on purchasing and procurement to approve the contract with Charles P. Johnson and Associates, Inc. for on-call engineering services in the not to exceed amount of $250,000.
Second.
You, any debate or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, 7-0. Okay, we should be able to move on to new business. I have 1 item, but I'll go last. Anyone else have items in new business that we have not already talked about in the matter of business today?
I believe that the board has a special meeting that we need to hold. Which I emailed Joelle about, but I haven't couldn't call it. It's been a little bit over a week. The emergency, CEO emergency powers calls for a special morning meeting of the board after CEO has declared an emergency, and we haven't met yet, or we haven't done that part. And I feel like we need to honor the resolution in this case. So in order to call a special meeting, we need 2 directors, unless Joel does it on his own. So I think we need to call a special meeting of the board. So I will motion to call a special meeting of the board and direct President Lepar to work with staff on a poll that determines a date.
Can we get a second for just a matter of debate? Okay, discussion. So I'll turn it to Tony first to make sure that we understand the resolution. The other part that I'd like to add is, I would imagine that this is solely focused on the building itself and any updates that would need to be provided to the community for that said emergency issue. And outside of that,
You mean the space that we run?
the space that we rent. The conference center, correct, yeah, so it would just be solely tied to that purpose and that purpose, solely to provide the community an update on how that might impact the association from a fiscal perspective. Or an operations perspective, clearly we don't have Zoom available, right, so things like that, I guess we could make a small update on when we expect. Could expect that to get back. Tony, do we have an understanding of the resolution?
I'm not.
Number 2,
Number 2.
suspension of service for municipal broker and brokers. We have suspended services.
Thought you were looking at their assessment of finance resolution.
No, I was looking at the CEO emergency powers.
So I'll just offer, I believe, and I may want to talk to Tony about this. I believe that I've invoked the CEO emergency powers multiple times for the sole purpose of not being able to do, or needing to sole source, get somebody out there to do something without getting bids and that sort of thing. We have never discussed a procedural requirement to have a special meeting. That is usually handled by email, written communication in those other situations. Now, this is a little bit different, but just in general, I'm actually not familiar with, or what we would do at such a meeting.
Resolve the emergency at the next board meeting at least, and then it goes, this one is not going away.
It's the board's position that we're suspending what services? Because
We're not renting out the conference room right now.
I mean, it's that. That's not service. I mean, normally this was enacted, or when this was your baby, during COVID, and it was about like camps. It was about shutting down meetings. And we haven't done that. We've moved.
Just change location.
Changed locations for all our meetings, all our covenants meeting, or all our committee meetings are moving forward. The only thing that's happened is we lost some revenue, which would be a fiscal situation. And I believe we're getting that covered. I think that would fall under resolution 7.
Which we don't know because we don't have an update. That, we don't, I
board
can't
call.
tell you the status of the conference center at all.
The board can call a special meeting for any reason if you have 2 directors of the president.
Correct.
That's it.
So I was just using that, yes, that's what I'm saying. We need a second director. I'm asking for a special meeting. If you guys believe that this is invoked, great. If you don't, we can still call a special meeting even if it's not. But the board needs an update and needs to understand what is going on related to the fact that we do not have a conference center that is functional right now. And because we don't have that and we're operating under an emergency power, we don't have insight right now of any expenditures that staff are spending on this emergency. And I feel like we need a special meeting to understand it.
Mr. Westbrook. Yes. If I can try and help you. It strikes me that at this point, there is a question as to whether the emergency powers needed to be involved in this instance that described as resolution. Because the council and the CEO have been dealing with the insurance companies and all of that. What Director Judge is asking for is an explicit update of that situation. I'm going to inquire about the nature of the motion. Is this something that can be included on the September 12th agenda? And would that be satisfactory to your desire to have an update? So can that happen? And can that be part of the CEO's update?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In lieu of a special meeting.
In lieu of a special meeting?
Yeah, I mean, looking down at Tony, my understanding was we enacted the emergency procedures for that day so that we could trigger getting insurance adjusters and out. not an ongoing state of emergency.
So, well, if we correct you, we did it to get remediation immediately because we had water, we had to get the place dried out.
Right, but that was.
That's it. That is
But
it.
you guys never let us know that it was over. So as far as I know as a board member, you guys are still under the state of emergency because it was never said.
You don't need a special meeting for that.
Director Farrell.
Mr. Vice President, if I might, it seems to me two things ought to happen. And people can come up with better ideas. One, a report to the board on what the status of the situation is at the conference center. Two, an expression that you're no longer operating under that, excuse me, that poorly. An expression by the CEO that he's no longer operating on the emergency powers set out in that resolution. It seems to me that that addresses Director Juszczyk's concern, and I offer that as a suggestion, not as any kind of criticism. It's just anytime executives express both emergency powers, there's always a coda. There's always a, okay, I'm done acting under an emergency arrangement, and everybody knows it. And there's a record that says we're not using those powers anymore. So it's just putting a period on it, and that can happen on the 12th, or it can happen tomorrow morning.
Understood. Director Johnson.
Can't we do this by an email to the entire board? Like, couldn't just a report cover that? And the reason I ask that is because the board regularly operates under the assumption that if we're all on an email chain, it constitutes a meeting.
It constitutes,
It constitutes some kind of meeting. That's why we typically split up our emails and things along those lines.
So that's why you can't have discussion.
So,
You can have an email, but not discussion.
okay, so if we have, can I finish?
But we're actually over time, point of order, the meeting needs to be extended. to a certain-
10:30, it's 9:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
We're not over
read
time.
that wrong. Hi, guys, I'm sorry, I apologize, Travis. Okay, thank you. You know, those two T's, I apologize.
In any case, so my thought is if we can operate, if we consider those a discussion covered by email to be a meeting, can't we just do a special meeting via email as a report?
Well, because there's public
Not a special,
requirements.
not a special meeting, but Director Farrell's point is well taken. We are currently potentially, forgive me, I know we have two members of the board that have currently proposed a special meeting. That's where we're at now.
Who has?
We need to have a.
John seconded it.
I know that's not
John
actually necessary for a special meeting, so can we just can we take that off the?
You can ask, the Director Juszczyk could ask for unanimous consent to withdraw our motion. And that would be the end of that, with the understanding that we'd get a written update from the CEO. And in that update, he would say, I'm no longer exercising emergency powers. And I think that would put the coda on the question that Director Juszczyk has brought up. That's my suggestion on how to solve the problem.
Are we good to make that into the CEO update?
I can have something out to you early next week.
Great.
And we'll take it from there.
Just for the clarification. Matt, as of 9:35 PM, are you no longer exercising powers?
I'm not putting him on the spot.
There we go. So it's point number one, but the update will be briefly reviewed. by the board. So, with that, we need to cover the concern.
Correct.
Okay,
She's withdrawing.
so she is withdrawing.
The board gave unanimous consent.
Yeah, we have to.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other items from anyone else for new business?
I submitted a request to put it under the new business agenda item, but it did make the packet for some reason. Izzy and I have been working with Tony on some modifications to resolution 2, and I think that it needs to be placed on a future board agenda. It might still need some tweaks, and I was hoping you guys would see it and maybe give the feedback in the meantime that we can continue working with Tony and those tweaks. But I would like to see it on some future agenda.
Okay, Resolution.
Needs resolution two.
Can I request that we get the current version up to the board? The emails, if it didn't make it to the board packet.
So we could have that as an informational item potentially on the September 12th.
And Joel always said he wanted it in September when you sent your email.
I mean, Izzy and I don't care if it's in December, we just want it some future.
If you're giving that grace,
I'm
then.
fine with Joel and Matt deciding what, future agenda it goes on, but
Okay,
I just want it somewhere to.
Yes.
Going into the parking lot resolution 2
Yep.
and basically by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
We'll get something out to the board so they can look at
Yeah, I will be submitting something as
it.
well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sure. But that's why I was trying to get it in the packet, because I knew there would be feedback.
Okay, any other resolutions? If not, I'll wrap us up with another item here. So I've been working on a resolution which seems awfully formal. But I think it could be beneficial to have it in that type of setting for the board and for future boards moving forward. The inspiration and the concept behind this is what we do with elections. And the idea that in elections, when we have questions that are asked for clarification, those answers go out to all participants and all candidates so that they can benefit the same from those answers, right? And so as we operate as a board, I think we have a really strong dynamic of those that are incredibly active, incredibly invested, and we have some that have greater time constraints that don't have that ability to always be looking and as alert to every small nuance that board members are bringing up, and rightfully so. My idea for a resolution is not to curtail any sort of communication between the board and staff, but it would operate in much the same way, with one exception basically, which is things that are directed to Tony that Tony believes do not entail a reply all response to the board. But to have, when your questions or directives to staff, when any board member asks a question or directive to a SLT member, whether that's Lauren, Parks and Rec, whether that's our COO, whether that's our CFO, whether that's Mac himself, that we would basically have that person, that staff SLT member, reply all to the board listserv. It's already there.
Already in
That mechanism is already in our resolution.
I think you're confusing the elections resolution.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about.
That would be great if it was, please.
Communication with staff, questions to staff, questions from members to staff. It's there. I can't put my finger on it right now.
That's fair.
But maybe you and I can have a conversation.
Would love to, yeah.
We can try and find it, but I have an allergic reaction to proliferation of resolutions.
As do I, and that's why it felt more than was necessary, but I also think it's important, and so if it's already there, fantastic. Then we would encourage staff to continue to pursue what's already in
And Mr. Vice President, maybe just that your intention needs to be embellished or brought out with more detail.
Yep.
To get it across, but I believe it's already in one of our resolutions.
Okay, I'll work with you this week and we can talk a little bit more about it. And maybe it's just then an informational piece that we bring up. So thank you.
And also just for clarification, I thought it was also said that board members do not give directives to staff members. They go through. I mean, that's not that's outside of our.
I appreciate that. And so I don't mean, in doing this, I think is maybe another friendly reminder for all of us.
Sure.
And then two, I do think that sometimes I hear secondhand of a lot of the good questions, a lot of the good comments,
Right.
a lot of the good thought that is coming through to staff.
Right.
Questions that are being answered. And so not all of that is being shared with the board. And that's not something I'm putting on staff. I think most of the time, and I don't want to speak for staff.
Right.
I think it may be awkward to reply all unless it's been
Right.
head nodded and agreed upon in this type of study.
Resolution 5, Board Association Resolution 5. second page, be it further resolved. In the opinion of the CEO, information or requests for assistance, including any request which might require staff to generate and produce reports, opinions, analysis, or go beyond general routine administrative information, such requests shall be forwarded for action to the full board. For the
Fantastic.
next regular meeting.
I think what we're talking about.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
What we're talking
You might
about,
want to tweak it a little bit, but I think, well, the intent is there.
But this is saying at the next regular meeting, and I believe what I'm hearing is Trevor saying, if staff is responding to an email, please reply all to the whole board on the email
Contemporaneously.
versus waiting for the next regular board meeting.
I'll look at resolution 5. I did not do that homework yet, so I'll do that. I'll make sure that it has the components that I'm referring to in my edits.
Yeah, and Tony had a comment?
Hey, Tony will comment, I imagine.
I'm sorry.
yeah, I think, I'm just. I'll reserve my comments for then, in the end.
Understood, sorry.
Yes, it is. Director Dodd, the section you're recalling is about giving assignments to staff. And anytime we give an assignment to staff, that thing's a couple paragraphs up, that only the president can give that assignment or the full board gives that assignment or the CEO. So your memory is close, but there's a mechanism there along those lines. So resolution 5 is the place to take a look at to make
I will
Just
clarification.
reserve.
clarification, that concept applies to legal assignments to Tony. The board or the board president cannot give assignments to Laura Kowalski or to Peter Lust.
I gotta go back and read it, but
Mm.
at any rate, we don't have to solve the problem tonight.
So in any event, yes, as we talk about this, we're not currently operationalizing the concept. So however this goes, so one of you calls, now, so-and-so called me, asked this question, boom, here's the answer, everyone has it. The idea is information flow, as I understand it.
Okay, so I'd like to also then put in, similar to the way that we are doing resolution 2, I'd also like basically edits to resolution 5 to be part of the parking lot, and those edits that I will work on and make sure that Tony has eyes on as well. Look to strengthen what we are referring to right now.
Isn't resolution 5 the one that you guys just voted on in the last year?
Yes.
That's correct.
We vote on it all the time.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with this since I got here.
Yeah. Are we both able, Tony and Joel, coming up with a plan of meeting to put it on in the future? Or are you reserving a meeting?
Yes, Jalal and Mac, have that building.
Okay,
Mac, just to throw it out there, Teams that we're now starting to use as functionality that would allow us to create little spaces where you could keep that information almost like an FAQ kind of thing. And the board could be notified when there's an update to that document, so you can then click on it, immediately go to it, and it's there in perpetuity. So it's just something to think about as you move forward with it. So, we're not just relying on email.
In regards to the actual agenda itself, the only item that I believe I heard that needs to be added, there are 3 items, okay? I know one for sure, which was the,
Pyramid.
yes, ball field, Hunter Woods name change. And then it was also, just one that we also had the benefits based fee pyramid was coming back for a
And
follow-up.
calendar.
The election
Calendar and resolution 2.
Resolution 2 is gonna be,
Some other.
it is
Forward,
on,
not
it is on the
for
parking lot,
next
but it
meeting.
won't be the next meeting.
gonna make it.
Got it.
No, I'll bring it.
So elections committee calendar,
Is it possible to move fees to the 26th of September?
Yeah.
So we front loaded the 12th agenda with all the quarterly updates to try to clear space for budget.
fair.
Good idea.
We may have learned some lessons, perhaps.
Past.
Yeah.
So which?
No.
So we're
Not
moving
much
fees to
budget on
the
the
26th,
No, no, no.
and we are,
26th, I mean, we put
we'll
all
have an
these
election
things on the
calendar,
12th, so we
and we'll
can
have
budget on
Hunter
the
Woods.
So fees.
Mr. President, earlier on, when we talked about the elections calendar, I mentioned the need for us to get a copy of that matrix that all the board should get a copy of the matrix and and that specifically ask council to look at that matrix in the context of making sure the suggestions that came out of the elections committee conform to the POAA, and conform to the D. I believe there are several recommendations in that matrix that do not conform to either. And so I would be looking, I would want the board to have the benefit of council's input if we start going down through that matrix. Because that matrix goes on for a while and it's got a lot of changes to the way we run elections.
You have a column on there. I think this is the one you've already looked at.
I'll look at it again.
You might not have seen your column because it's so tiny, but I'm pretty sure Tony has a column on there. With his recommendations, so you can double.
If there is, I haven't seen his recommendation, but
I remember reading
that
them.
are very,
and I
very-
thought maybe-
there's several recommendations there that are very troubling, and I don't think comply with the statute or like a governing document. So I want to have a robust conversation about that. Need your help, need your input.
Well, you don't pay my charming personality, so I'll be ready.
Noted, Tony, we're good with that?
Yep.
Instruction then, great. So it's those two items that are added, Brittany, thank you. And is there any other comments, questions? Great, so we'll need a motion to approve them this
As amended.
as amended. Is there a second? Second, all those in favor? That's 7-0. With no further business in front of the board, we are adjourned at 9:08 PM. Thank you.
We didn't need a motion to
Hey,
accept.
everybody, just so I don't have to send an email, I'm going out of town tomorrow for the weekend, so Peter will be acting in my capacity till Monday.
Enjoy.
I hope.
And I hope.
Vegas.
We don't have my